Transformative Principal, episode 60 with Jason Bodnar. Thank you for tuning in to Transformative Principal today. Today we have Jason Bodnar, who hosts the podcast Principally Speaking, and it was a great conversation. We talked about a lot of stuff. I can't even remember now. It was so awesome. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening, and if you are interested in joining my Slack channel, please send me an email to jethro@paperlessprincipal.com. and I'll add you to my Slack team. What we use that for is a way to share resources and a way to help us become better and focus on improving ourselves and being a community together. So I hope you'll take an opportunity to join that, and there's a link in the show notes. If you click on that, that'll allow you to do that. Thanks so much. Today on the podcast, we have Jason Bodnar, who's the host of the Principally Speaking podcast at principlyspeaking.com. If you haven't checked that out, you really should. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing right now?
Sure. And just want to say thanks a ton for having me on the show. Like Jethro said, I have my own show, and I'm used to that end of it, so this is really cool to be kind of on the other end and get a chance to talk a little bit about myself with hopefully not coming off too egotistical. But I am an assistant principal at the middle school level right now. This is my second year in my current position, and I taught science for 9 years at the high school level. And like a lot of other administrators that I've talked to, I didn't think I'd ever want to be an administrator. But I got a lot inspired by a couple of different things. I got a chance to build my own class, an advanced science class, and also had a chance to work with the Assistant Superintendent on technology, specifically whether or not we would get netbooks or iPads in the chemistry classroom. And that was the first time in my career that I had, it was kind of bang, bang, two big things that happened that where the ball was really more in my court. I didn't feel like the leadership was just making me do something, or, I just had to go along with the flow. It was like, okay, you've been here a while. We trust that you know what you wanted, what's best for kids, and we're going to give you a couple of chances to do those things. And ever since then, it changed a lot of things for me. Before that, I was just I felt like I was maybe an average to good teacher. And when you have a chance to build your own class and that type of thing, and really have a say in what's going on in your classroom, it can only lead to good things.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So that's where I decided to get my master's in administration. I just love challenges. Administration, Jethro, is a challenge.
It is.
At all times, it's a challenge to do everything that you need to do and not be overwhelmed, stressed out, and understand time management, and to stay positive in challenging times. Right now, I know podcast listeners can be listening whenever, but we're getting close to ISTEP here in Indiana, which is our big test, and there's been a lot of changes with that, and there's a lot more accountability these days than there has been in the past, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it's a different era, I think, in education now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so as an administrator, there's even more accountability. But like I said, that's not necessarily bad. So that's kind of where I'm at. So it's 11 years in education. I love being in education. I love connecting with others. My podcast has helped me do that. Twitter and those types of things have been a game changer for me. So I'm excited to see kind of what can happen next.
That's great. So you talked about having the opportunity to help make decisions as a teacher and create your own class. How do you try to do that right now in your current position? How do you try to give teachers authority and autonomy over the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis?
As an assistant principal, it's an interesting thing. You have to really be able to hopefully have your voice and not step on the toes of the head principal. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And some of the things that we're able to do at my school, we are not a one-to-one school, but we do have iPads. Specifically in the math and English classes. Mm-hmm. And one thing that, technology is something that I really enjoy working with in the classroom. So one thing that I try to work with on teachers is helping them understand that even though we're in the classroom a lot, meaning administrators, if you're trying something new, don't be afraid that it doesn't go perfectly. I think we get caught up, a lot of the times in those assessments and all those types of things, but there's so many unique ways to have kids demonstrate their learning with that technology, even sometimes without that. We want to encourage teachers, and I try to do my best to give teachers those opportunities to branch out, try something new, see if it works well in your classroom. If it doesn't, I'm not going to dock you or anything like that. In fact, that's a good sign. If you feel like you can try something different, your lesson plans are fluid. Just because, you put this down on a piece of paper that your lesson plan is going to look exactly like this, it doesn't have to look that way. I always try to come back to the fact that I'm always changing. I was, as a teacher, I didn't always know what I was doing. I'm not going to pretend just because I'm an administrator now that I was a perfect teacher and everything worked perfectly and I never had an off day. And, that mindset of remembering what it's like to be a teacher, knowing that no matter where you're at, unless you've been a teacher before, you don't really understand all the challenges that come with that. And, what the students bring to the table, the challenges that they have coming from home. You've got to just be able to, I think, portray this mindset of, I'm here to help you. I'm here to be more of a facilitator. And I really do believe in that philosophy of teaching more as a facilitator now, too, instead of basically doing what I'm doing right now, constantly talking and being that sage on the stage. That was kind of something I've been working on. I think last year, leading some meetings, I ended up talking too much and not getting more feedback from the teachers and that type of thing. So that's part of my mindset that I'm always trying to work on.
Yeah, and that's a really excuse me, hard. That's a really hard thing to do, to come away from that sage on the stage thing when it's not what you want, and yet you're still falling into that trap. That's something that I struggle with too, where I know that I need to just stop talking, and sometimes that's really difficult. Tell me what those conversations look like when you tell teachers don't be afraid to try something new, and you let them know that you're always changing. How does that conversation go? What is your plan for instilling trust in your teachers to feel comfortable to do something new that may be different than what they've done before?
Yeah, I think what I try to do to the best of my ability is relate it back to myself, and that not always talking about me, because it's important to not always just be the Jason show. But at the same time, when I see a teacher struggling, or not even necessarily struggling, but I want to encourage them to try new things and different things. I help them understand that, especially when we have a new teacher, I think that's a really important thing. Help them feel comfortable and know that when I first started teaching, I was all over the place. I didn't know, I didn't even have a classroom, so I'm just kind of running around, and you're almost in survival mode at that point.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I try to just help them understand that it comes back to that philosophy of I'm 35 years old. There are people younger than me that know more than me. There are people older than me that know more than me. And that's okay, as long as I am continually trying to grow, and I can't be a successful administrator and not reaching out to others, and really, whether that be in my building or beyond the building, and gathering the information and ideas that I think are best for students.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for a teacher to argue, well, I've been doing this 30 years this way, and that's the best way to do it. You know, I get that to an extent. Um, but if you don't, I mean, I think if you're a strong teacher, you recognize that if you're not growing, then how do you expect your students to continue to grow?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not taking chances, why would your students take a chance? Students always not always, but often walk into a class. I saw this a lot at high school level. They walk in and the famous, I hate science.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like science.
Yeah.
Well, that's because a lot of the time, to me, your experience with science hasn't been what you need. It's not because you don't like science. It's because the instruction that you've had, and not necessarily across the board, but it hasn't tapped into maybe something that would really get you going. Now, not everybody's going to like science. I'm just a science nerd, and I understand that. But a lot of the times, unfortunately, kids get through school and they just have this thing where this mindset that they just don't like it. They don't like math. They don't like social studies. They don't like anything. And when really it's a kind of and including myself, I think sometimes it's kind of a teacher failure to really reach out to what are the needs of the student. And
Yeah.
and I think that's an important thing to think about. I think we get too caught up in content as far as getting through the content, but how can we take it to the next level so that we inspire kids to not even maybe realize that they're learning science in between all the great things that you can do to kind of to engage those students?
Yeah, so I've got a great story about that I'd like to share real quick. This week, one of the science teachers at my school was doing this bacteria thing where you go in and swab a bunch of stuff with a cotton or a Q-tip, and then you roll it out on some sort of mixture in a petri dish, and then you sit there and watch the bacteria grow, right? So one kid stuck his Q-tip down the mouthpiece of a drinking fountain and then down the drain of a drinking fountain, and then came back and rubbed it on the thing, and obviously that one had the most bacteria, and it grew like crazy, and it was a big deal in that 6th grade science class that this was going on. So these 3 girls came down and said, Mr. Jones, we need new drinking fountains because ours are covered in bacteria and it's totally gross, and we need better, cleaner drinking fountains. And I was so proud of these girls for saying, there's a problem, and we conducted an experiment to see that, and we need to do something about it. That was an awesome thing. Now, there are a few problems. Number one, the kid put it in the mouthpiece and in the drain, so we can pretty much be sure where the bacteria is from. Number two, of course, bacteria like to grow in a constantly wet environment that constantly has, other bacteria joining it. So naturally, we'd find more bacteria there in the drain. And also, this experiment was not conducted with great controls or in a super scientific way. But I didn't want to, shut these girls down. So I just said, if this is an issue, we should probably do some further investigation. And I'd like for you girls to redo the test, do it in a more scientific manner, make sure you know that what you're doing and you're keeping good controls in place, and you're swabbing different places and comparing the bacteria to the mouthpiece to the drain, see what that looks like. And you can't just take this one study and say, okay, now we definitely need new drinking fountains. We need to have some better data to go along with that. And these girls were very excited to to start doing that, and they were ready to go the to go the distance and do something about it. And what I was so proud of was that the teacher had created an environment where the kids could have some freedom to start looking at things on their own, and then could then find a way to make it apply in their actual lives. And these 3 girls took that and ran with it. And, that's what we want to do in education. That's what it's all about. And so there was no problem in my perspective from these girls doing a little petition, coming down and saying, we think we need a new drinking fountain, and making a big deal about it. And, I was fine to support them in that and say, let's go, let's do a little bit better scientific experiment. And if the results are the same, then, I'll be the first one to agree that we should have a new drinking fountain if ours is disgusting and covered in bacteria that could make us sick. So anyway, it was a cool experience where it actually did matter to these kids what they were learning in science class.
Yeah, and I really like that story because, it just kind of pains me when I think of even my own teaching, a good part of the beginning of my career where it's just, turn to page 110, and it's like I'm boring myself. And you think about all the opportunities out there to get kids involved. The kids, you can't beat a situation where the kids are doing science, real science, and something that actually connects to the school and provides the students a voice. I talked actually in my last podcast to a gentleman that's a technology director out in Boston, and it came back to student voice. And that podcast for me is actually coming out on Tuesday, so I'm pretty pumped about that. But a lot of my podcasts, I keep talking to people that are all over the gamut as far as what their official position is. But what makes them great is they have a knack for figuring out how to get students a strong voice. And when students come up to the principal and say, we need new fountains, whether it's true or not, like you said, I think it's cool. I think maybe you have some good scientific background and all that. Not every principal probably knows what controls and variables are, but being able to just have that voice and say, this is what we need. And then you turn it back and you don't say, no, you're wrong. You say, do it again, do it better. And then we'll talk. And then, that's what science is, so they're doing a real life experiment. They're improving that. And that's something they're going to remember. Not even if you don't put in new water fountains, that's the type of thing that kids like. They like running around the school trying to have a say in something like that. So that's neat to hear.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Let's talk a little bit about the differences between being at a high school and being at a middle school. I'm at a middle school myself, and it's where I want to be. It's what I love. You started out at high school and then came down to the middle school. What are some of the big differences that you see, and how you have to approach your job in dealing with teachers and dealing with students?
I think I'll start from the student perspective because lately that one's been standing out to me more, I think. As a high school teacher, I started off, and that was kind of an evolution for me too, because I mainly started with the freshman level. And as I worked through my different teaching spots, I should say, or assignments, I got more into the sophomores and then eventually some juniors and senior classes. And even there's a lot of difference, and just some neat opportunities to talk to kids about what's next for them. And obviously, you can talk about maturity level. There were some very immature high school students, but I enjoyed connecting with kids at that level. At the middle school level, right now I'm the 6th grade assistant principal, so that's different, I think, than being over the entire school. 6th grade is almost like elementary, and we have students that still could thrive in an elementary school. We have some 6th graders that are more like 7th or 8th graders. And then we have 8th graders that are more like 6th graders. Yeah. And, one thing that I will say has been a challenge as an administrator at the sixth grade level is dealing with a lot of unfortunate drama
Mm-hmm.
that especially between girls, that it can be hard to just get past for these kids. They are so, you know, uh, we could talk probably a whole hour about all the different social media out there and all the ways that kids communicate now and how it's so different.
Yeah.
And that's a lot different than when I was a high school teacher, even just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, yeah, there was Facebook, but um, all the Instagram and everything, and it takes about 30 seconds for one student to be mad at somebody else,
Yeah.
for a rumor to spread around the whole school,
Yeah.
and that's tough. That can be kind of a grind.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to help students see a big picture when you're at the high school level. I think it maybe not always, but it seems to be a little bit easier to help students kind of cope with challenges in that way and try to help them see a bigger picture. When you're in sixth grade, you your perspective on life isn't necessarily terribly grounded, and when somebody says something negative about you, it seems to be, at least in my experience so far, it seems to be amplified about 1,000 times. So
Yeah.
as far as teachers and that type of thing, I don't know that there's a huge difference. Obviously, I wasn't an administrator at the high school level, but I don't know if my approach would necessarily be a lot different if I was a high school administrator dealing with or talking with high school teachers. I think good teachers are good teachers. I think there's really
Yeah.
excellent teachers at all levels, and if you're out there and, like I said before, trying new things and you're doing what's best for students, I really think you can be successful at any level. I
Mm-hmm.
know for myself, and this is no slam at all on, I just couldn't do elementary. I can't. I think elementary teaching, elementary administration is another ball of wax. It's not bad. It's just not me.
Hey,
And I,
Jason, I totally thought that also, and I still maintain I would suffer greatly as an elementary school teacher, but I gotta tell you, man, it is so much fun at elementary. I mean, I just the things the kids say, the things the kids do, it just you're having like hundreds of opportunities to smile about cute little things that kids do that it just blows your mind. So don't rule it out yet, is what I'm saying. You might find a space for that in your heart. It's pretty fun.
yeah, and I do love, I love younger kids too. So I shouldn't block myself totally. I know elementary teaching was not for me. How about we'll put
Yeah,
it that way?
yeah,
I know that
absolutely.
I have friends that are elementary teachers, and I give props to them because
Absolutely.
that takes a lot of energy.
Yep, it sure does. Thank you so much for downloading and listening to this podcast. Please subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher, and please feel free to give us a rating on Stitcher Radio or on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about how much we're learning in this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones.